Your clients hire you as much for who you are as what you do. And your ability with intention to define it and express it in a way that really resonates with your people, that is transformative.
Step into the world of success with Your Brand Amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. This is a very rare interview where I sought out my guest via LinkedIn, Robert Friedman, Fearless Branding. Love what you do. And branding is something that I think a lot of people don't really understand what it is. They don't understand how to use it effectively. And they don't understand that it's really the base of everything else that you do for your marketing, your advertising, just general awareness of your brand. So thank you for being on Your Brand Amplified.
My pleasure. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So talk about your career a little bit and what led you then to start your own agency, because you started out in the agency world, the big guys.
Yeah, exactly. I did. So when I graduated from college, I was interested in the fundamental question, what makes somebody buy something? It's just like, what's going on the inside and how can a brand or a business connect with them? And that's still really what motivates me today. So I started out, as you said, big guys. It was an agency called Darcy Macias Benton and Bowles, kind of like, the Mad Men kind of experience. It was in the 80s and I was in account work. Then I moved to a small agency where we were kind of a hybrid agency / marketing consulting firm. And we were responsible for all the market research and product development concepts. And it was super interesting. Then got hired out of that agency by a client, which was a division of Kraft. I was brand manager of a business called The Budget Gourmet. It was frozen foods. Did that for a number of years. And then after that business got sold and moved away, I started the entrepreneurial journey. I did one more stint at Nestle on Coffee Mate as kind of a fractional interim director of marketing. And that was a moment where I had this kind of crisis of meaning. Like, why am I working on Coffee Mate? It's artificial powder. This is not how I want to spend my life. And do I need to get out of marketing? But then I thought, okay, I'm working on Coffee Mate, but somebody else is working on Apple. And that guy's working on Carnation Instant Breakfast, but somebody else is working on Nike. And so those brands are clearly different, right? You went from frown to smile as you listen to this. And so the question, so is it just that they're cool and there's nothing you could do about it? Like the cool kids in high school and they just are because they are, or is there something more systematic? And so I really dug in to understand those brands in particular, a couple more, but not just a big brand. Certain types of big brands. And what I saw was that they were built on the foundation of a single meaningful idea that was related to their products, but transcended the products. So for example, Apple, it's not just an apple, it's an apple with the bite taken out of it. That comes from the book of Genesis, like the serpent that ate that, that took the bite. Eve took the bite out of the apple. And so Apple stands for create, it's the creation myth. And that's what they do, right? They are the creators and they help you, if you're their kind of people, be a creator too, right? Nike is, I don't know if you know this, Nike is the Greek goddess of victory, the goddess Nike. And so it stands for victory. It stands for winning. I just saw this they have a new campaign. Of course, they always, for years, they used Just Do It. Now their campaign is you can't win, so win. There was this cool quote from their chief marketing officer who said, what we stand for is a brand is about helping you win whatever winning looks like for you in your life. And that's the connection, right? It's not about, the product specifications of how the shoe works and, all that's important, but that's not what the
Yes.
brand is really about, right? It's really about the core idea that answers the question, who are you as the brand? Who are you? And so that's really my mission. That's what I do is I help businesses. My clients are experts who have built professional services and consulting firms around their expertise. So sometimes it's just them. Often they have a small team and they've got a way, right? Don't do what they do just the same way everybody else does it. They don't do it the way the big guys do it. They've got a way. And so the niche that I feel is if you're at the top of your game and you've got a way, but your best prospects don't fully understand it. Like they really can't see the difference between you and your strengths and, what you offer. If you need that idea and you need the right language and the right way to convey it to your market, I can help you get there. And it will make a just exponential, dramatic difference in your business and your life.
Amazing. I have to say, I did not know the full story about the Apple. I did know the Nike story, but I also, one of the great things about Nike is, and this goes back to just do it, it goes back to their new slogan, but it's not just, they think everybody's an athlete, right? If you have a body, you are an athlete. And so they're really trying to be there. Yes, they show premier athletes in advertising, but they also show real people. And they're trying to make sure that they're relatable, but also that they're aspirational. And so that's what I think of when I think of the brand and think about like what I would want to purchase next from them. And that you're really hitting on something that I see time and time again with people who've been in business. They've worked for big businesses. They've maybe started their own. And I will look at their materials and I'm doing, the PR, the brand engagement side, not necessarily the work that you're doing, but I'm saying you're talking about your features. You're not like making me really excited. It doesn't look sexy, or the language that you're using is so technical on your website that if your ideal customer comes to your website, they're not really going to understand what you do, or they're going to get lost in the jargon. And you're going to take, instead of having a very succinct statement, you're going to have to talk for several minutes to just disseminate your message. So is that what you often see when clients come to you?
Yes. So in your preparation package, you asked if I have a favorite quote.
Yeah.
And it's somewhere between a quote and a story. So Steve Jobs started Apple, but he got kicked out and went on to start Next Computer. But then Apple was in trouble and they were about to most likely go under. And they brought Steve Jobs back to turn the business around. So he went back, and very soon after he rejoined, he created a new ad campaign. And when he was introducing it to his internal team, he said, we need to turn the Apple brand around. And the way to do it is not to talk about speeds and feeds and why we're better than Windows. That's exactly what you were just talking about. Those, just like the features and and the details, right? What our customers care about is who is Apple? What do we stand for? Where do we fit in this world? And then he went on to introduce the Think Different campaign. That was the campaign that had Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Maria Callas and Picasso and Bob Dylan. They're all people who created something extraordinary out of nothing. And the way Jobs described it is that people with passion can change the world for the better. And he said, this is the idea that touches the soul of our company. And so that's where, right? Like just to reinforce what you were saying, it's so important to find that core idea that expresses the soul of your entire business that your customers can connect to emotionally, and all of your other stakeholders, your team, your referral sources, your entire ecosystem. They should have this very visceral sense of who you are. And so it's work, but you can get there, right? Like that's kind of my, the drum I beat is that a few of these big brands have done it, but you can do it too. You don't need these multi-billion dollar budgets in order to do it. You just have to think deeply about what that idea is.
Yeah. You have had Fearless Branding for over 24 years, which is a testament to your small business. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you took your own brand out of the world of corporate, hanging your own shingle, starting your own company, and making sure that your brand was getting out there to your ideal customer persona. So that's part one. And then I have a couple of follow-up questions.
Yeah. Well, I think in the beginning, especially, I was naive. I was introduced by a friend to this small boutique branding agency. And I had been kind of transitioning out of corporate and brand management. And I looked at what they were doing. It's like, oh, I want to do that. Right. Like it wasn't any more complicated than that because I loved the fundamental branding, the brand strategy, and the expression part of the work. But when you're a brand manager, you do so many other things besides that. I was like, okay, that's what I want to focus on. And so it really was, the entrepreneurial journey. I mean, this is, like trudging on a long hike. So, I started naively, not knowing, exactly where I was headed. And over time, I refined my target market. I refined what fearlessness really meant and how to translate that into specific client and market pain points, as well as connected to my methodologies, right? Like that evolved over quite a few years to hone it and get it tight. In the beginning, because I came out of packaged goods, I thought I would just be working with packaged goods companies smaller than, the Nestle's and the Crafts, but it didn't really work out that way. And then I saw, okay, so who are my clients? Well, they were different types of service firms from construction, interior design, financial services. But the thing that they all had in common was that there was an owner who was leading a firm and they had to sit down with the client and figure out, are we going to be a fit? And how do we tell that story in a way that is going to work for everyone? And then over time, I refined it and I saw the types of clients that I could help the most were experts. There's a book called, I believe it's called Selling the Intangible, right? And that's kind of my sweet spot. Less like a construction firm. Well, there's a building or a home or whatever that you can see, you can touch, right? But if you're a management consultant or an attorney, it's harder to really understand, well, what really makes you different? And how do we answer the question, why should we choose you? Yeah. And so that's kind of been just the evolution. And I've been driven by the ideas of it.
Yeah. Nice. Well, you answered one of my questions, which was, did you know what your ideal customer profile was going to be? And then how did it evolve? So
in the very beginning, no. And it's so important and you can't rush it. It just takes in some ways it takes the time it takes, but that is one piece of advice, when I see entrepreneurs who are kind of maybe earlier in their journey, I see that they're vague in terms of their expression of their target market. And I think it holds you back. I mean, I don't know if I'm looking at it from a certain perspective where I am saying, well, who are you doing this for?
Yeah.
Right. And it looks like just basic example. If you're a coach, I work with executives and high potential people and entrepreneurs and business owners. Like, I can't refer you.
Yeah. Yeah. What does that mean? Who's niche down a little bit? And that's something, because I teach grad school at USC, digital media management. And it's something that I'm working with my students on because they all have capstone projects. So I'm trying to introduce them to new tools that can help them, especially the ones who don't have as much digital experience and haven't lived in this world of marketing, advertising. So I'd love to hear, because I was living in San Francisco when you started this business. I know that you're there now. And it was the very early .com days. I was working at Future US, which had Business 2.0 and a whole bunch of other publications. So I remember those early days of us having access to the internet, right? Having it be more democratized and figuring out what was next. And do we need a website? And I know that is one of your capabilities right now is you do design brand and then you help translate brand to website, collateral, everything else. What else have you seen change in the landscape? Because obviously the ethos of branding has remained the same, but the ways that we talk about brands, whether it's social media, other digital platforms, streaming versus, what we consider traditional, which was magazines, the newspapers that we used to actually get, some we still do, and cable television. So what other changes have you seen in the way that you're helping clients expand and express their brand once they've worked with you?
Okay, that question, I thought you were going one place. So let me answer that first, like just what I've seen in terms of changes. And I would say, so number one thing is leadership has been democratized, right? Like you can have an idea and you can create a platform around it, and you don't need to have a huge budget as long as you have a great idea and you're able to express it in a powerful way. Then it's so much easier than it used to be. You don't need a network television show, for example, to get your message out there. But at the same time, there's a lot of crap and there's a lot of noise out there as well, right? So, what I find is like in my social media feeds, I'm just like, okay, I'm done with you. I'm done with you, right? Like I need to just focus on some voices that I find interesting.
Right.
And, avoid the others.
Right.
And then you asked about my clients specifically.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure how to answer that in the context of like trends and kind of evolution, because my mission is to help them find their idea and then build everything they say and do around that. And so I see transformation at the individual business level.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
That they're going from, like I would say one of my best clients, she owns a personal injury law firm, and she came to me and basically the question is, why isn't my marketing working? We are so good at what we do. And yet we are seeing competitors who are not as good as we are land the biggest cases, and was angry and frustrated, right? Like, why is this going on? And she went to an executive coach that we both know who said, like, you're not doing anything wrong. You don't necessarily need an executive coach, but you should work with a branding expert. And my coach referred the client to me. So what I do see, especially in the world that I play in, is that there is a lot of focus on the tactics. So, whether it be constant presence on social media, in the world of law firm marketing, there's so much focus on SEO, right? And search engine optimization for anybody in your audience. And what I see is that there's so many firms that are doing the right things, right? They're actually taking action, and they're even the right actions. But if the brand that is kind of going into those marketing engines is not as strong as it could be, is fundamentally, I'd say either boring, generic, or confusing. If it's one of those things, and often it is one of those things, then your marketing is not going to work, or it's not going to work as well as it could. I use the analogy of you're going on a bike ride, and you could either be on an old school beach cruiser and you're pedaling, right? You're not stuck. You are getting somewhere, right? But then if you get off the beach cruiser and you get onto a finely tuned racing bike, and then you keep doing those same number of pedals, you're going to be just enormously further.
Right.
Because you're working with efficiency instead of that old clunky thing. It's like, you're not totally stuck, but you're limiting yourself.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. What is you gave one example of a client who came to you in frustration. After working with you, what kind of results were you able to, because obviously she's happy client, she's had success once she did some work with you. So did you do a complete rebrand? Did you just tweak messaging?
No, it's a complete rebrand.
Yeah.
So we used the same formula
Hmm.
that I kind of reverse engineered from Apple and Nike.
Nice.
And so from my perspective, Apple is built on the book of Genesis. I mean, I don't think anybody in Apple would necessarily say, oh, yeah, like that's where we got it from. Although I have heard people say, oh, yeah, it's knowledge, right? So Nike, Greek mythology. So she had a very generic brand before we started working together. And we created a brand that is a modern day retelling of David and Goliath. And so, that's often what I'm looking to do. Is there part of the Bible or a myth or a fable or a story everybody knows or a person everybody knows? Like I'm working with another client now, and our inspiration is Leonardo da Vinci because it's this mashup of art and science.
Ooh.
Right? So I'm always looking for that inspiration. So that particular client was built on a modern day retelling of David and Goliath. And the results are so clear on that one. She was already successful. She's a personal injury lawyer, had a string of cases, kind of mid six figures. Her average case size has maybe 10x'd. So, I mean, really enormous changes. And she calls it a 1-2 punch, really, because I mean, she started from being that good, right? She was really good. It's not like I made her a better lawyer, but she didn't have the ability to tell her story as powerfully and as clearly as she needed to. And so with that, she calls it a 1-2 punch. Her skills, the ability to tell the story, it's really transformed because she was just being ignored.
Yeah.
And she just couldn't get the traction with the types of clients for the kind of cases that she really wanted. And by telling that story in a more powerful way, we changed that dynamic. And it just, it's the thing that cracked it open.
Yeah. Amazing. Have you ever gotten tired, bored, had a client that, you were like, they're not listening. I can't really help them the way that, if they continue to work with me, I could help them, but they're putting up roadblocks.
Sure.
Yeah.
One that comes to mind is a firm that had a fairly large leadership team. So there was a CEO, and then the leadership team was maybe 8 additional people. So maybe a total of 9. And the CEO really wanted the team to like kind of figure it out and work it out as opposed to saying like, this is what we're going to do.
Right.
And they ended up splitting into basically 2 factions. And so it was really hard to manage 8 people to create a brand idea that was powerful and meaningful and differentiated and fearless, because there was just so many people to manage. And so, what I really, I would say I hate learning, right? Like, but what I learned from that is it's a better fit for me to work with clients where while there may be a team, there is a person who is the visionary and who is decisive, who's willing to be fearless, who's willing to, I always say my business is called fearless branding, but not daredevil branding, right? So we have some carefully considered steps, including in kind of a deep strategy process and a research process to make sure that we're making the right moves. But with that in mind, I always talk about like, you want to find your edge, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go over the edge, then you're weird, and you fall over and you go splat. But if you're not close enough to the edge, then you're kind of in boring land. Right. So you need to figure out where is that edge. And, that takes leadership. And I think, so anyway, so I looked for I look for businesses that have a decisive leader who's
Nice.
willing to do that work and willing to make the fearless decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. You mentioned a little bit earlier that now you don't have to be the big company with the big team and the big budget. You can start if you have an idea. You can build a brand around that and be successful in today's age. And I would say that generative AI, in the last couple of years at least, has helped democratize that process even more. Are you seeing clients come to you and say, what are you doing with AI? What are you not doing with AI? How important is the human element? I know that was a few questions in one. So,
Yeah. So I would say overall, there's just, everybody's talking about it, especially colleagues, more than clients. It's colleagues who are talking about how do we use it. And I got to say, what I have seen is that AI makes, like, it brings things into the middle, right? Most of what comes out of AI, unless you really like push back, which is the human element, right? It's like it's not going to push itself back. It's just, it's fine. It's professional. But it's so
average,
generic.
right?
It's
Yeah.
really homogenized.
Yes.
It's like processed food. It's just so milk toast and boring and generic. And that's what the default is going to be, I think. And so I think it's really good. Like I needed to get kind of a legal type of letter written. And it was great at that because I didn't need it to be distinctive. I didn't need it to express anything that was going to create resonance with the other, with the receivers of that message. But if you need to really tell the world or your audience who you are in a distinctive way, I don't think AI is at the like that. That's not the job of AI. I mean, I think it can be a partner in helping part of that, but it's not going to just give you ideas. I don't think. And I've seen claims, of businesses that have kind of created these AI engines. It's like, oh, in just 45 minutes you can position your agency and it'll do a complete. It's like it was crap.
Yeah. Yeah. I asked that because I love using artificial intelligence tools. I love learning about it, but I also always try to emphasize to my students or whoever I'm talking exactly your point. It's the sum of all human average. So it's you still have to put your own thought, your own expertise into it if you are using it as a partner or a tool, right? But it doesn't take away from like your construct, what you've done, the research you've done on fearless branding and what you bring to the table for your clients.
Yeah.
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 So you've mentioned a few times about the David and Goliath story, Nike, Greek mythology, Apple, going back to the book of Genesis. There are a lot of connections, it seems, between branding and religion. And of course, we evangelize some of these brands, right? Apple, I mean, big time, long lines every time they have a new project release, even though if it's a small update, people still get excited. So I'd love to hear more about your thoughts around that construct.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because that is one of the things that I say is that branding is like religion. I have a specific way. And early as I get to know somebody who might be a client, I want to explain to them what my way is, which is about a lot of the things that we've been talking about, because it's not a fit for most businesses because of their fundamental beliefs, right? So it's like religion. If I'm a Buddhist or a Christian, just pick one, but you're something else or you're nothing, right? You may believe what I believe if I explain the tenets of that religion, but you may not.
Mm.
And if you don't, somebody might try to convert, but how likely is it that you're
Mhm.
really going to fundamentally change your beliefs such that, you drop what you have been believing and then come to a different place. I think it's not very likely. So just as an example, I've had conversations with business owners and we talk about the Steve Jobs story. I talk about the successes that I've had with clients who've leveraged the same thinking. And they say, it's just not going to work for us. Like, our clients are engineers. They don't care. They don't care about the narrative. They just want, 16 slides filled with data that are going to show them why we're going to decrease their time to market by 4% or whatever. Right.
Ooh.
And they just that's what that particular CEO, kind of owner of a kind of mid-sized expert driven business, very technical, believed. Right. And so I saw the opportunity. And in fact, they're kind of in this scientific market that's actually really sexy, really I could have easily created a juicy narrative around it, but he just he didn't believe what I believed, right? We were just different branding religions.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. We're not for everybody and everybody's not for us. So personally and professionally, it can happen in both places. So what would you want to impart? You did mention a couple of things early on, but if somebody is starting out with a new business or they're looking at a pivot, their marketing is not getting traction, they may not be your ICP, your ideal customer profile, but what are some things that they should be thinking about? What are some approaches they should take?
Yeah. So we talked kind of at a high level about how I approach branding, but at a more detailed level, I use a model that's based on 5 questions. So the first one is, who are you? And that's what we've been talking about. And I feel like most businesses don't answer that. And in fact, for all of these 5 questions, you'll see they're so basic, but most businesses answer them generically. And if you can answer them really precisely, that becomes the foundation of a strong brand. So the questions are, who are you? What do you do? That's on the business side, the brand side. Then the next questions are, who do you do it for? And that can be the demographics, like all the tangible stuff, size of business or income or geography, but also psychographics. What do they believe? What's important to them? Right? So who are you? What do you do? Who do you do it for? What do they need or want? And right, because some brands are focused on addressing a problem. Other brands are focused on capturing a possibility or an opportunity. And then the final question is, what do they get? So who are you? What do you do? Who do you do it for? What do they need? And what do they get? You can answer those 5 questions precisely and combine emotion and function. That's a strong brand. But most businesses don't really answer those questions precisely.
Yeah. Yeah. I could not agree with you more. It's funny when people have come to me and said, I have a website, I'm on social media, here's my logo, I'm ready for interviews, I'm ready to be ready for PR. And I always go, wait, but you don't actually have a brand. Like, you have elements of a brand, but you haven't answered those questions. You don't have I like to look at the brand blueprint construct, right? So your purpose, mission, vision, values, and all of that stuff that goes into the who that you're talking about, that then helps lead into the other questions that you mentioned. So I love that these are essentials. These might seem as very basic, but these are so foundational to business.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I was talking about in terms of like that bicycle metaphor, right? I have a website, I'm on social media, I'm doing all these things, right? But who are you really? How are you doing something that is truly different? And how does that connect to your audience? One of the things I see is that so many businesses define their target market way too broadly, right? That particularly for smaller businesses, you don't need, millions of customers like, a big brand like a Coke or a, whatever, right? You just need a small number of customers and you would be wildly successful if you got to your goal, right? But maybe it's 10 customers, 100 customers, even 1,000 customers. I believe the way to get there is to really laser focus on just what you need to do to get to your goal, not everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. What does life look like for you and your business moving forward in this new digital age? The clients that I think you're probably in a place where the type of clients you have is not going to go away. They're always going to be things that people need, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Do you see some expansion of that? You're going to stay in that sweet spot?
Yeah, I think maybe a slight bump up in terms of size of business, but not too big businesses for the reasons that we were talking about, like when there was that leadership team that,
Yeah.
that couldn't get through us, right? But really my vision is to work with professional services firms. They usually have, 5 to 50 people, but they really are honing their expertise, like what makes them at the top of their field. And they're investing in those things, right? They're investing in marketing and need to just tell a better story. And so, my in terms of kind of, what I'm out there in the world trying to achieve is they believe in their expertise. They believe like they're of the religion, the branding religion that we've been talking about. And they've got enough, I'll just use the term self-awareness for lack of a better term, to say, yeah, you know what? Our story is maybe a bit generic. Yeah, maybe we do sound like our competitors. It's not as strong as it can be, as it needs to be for us to be able to deliver that expertise. So, really that's what I'm looking for. I am looking for kind of partnership, people who can do pieces of this work that, yeah, compadres.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's always important to have them in your corner, in your back pocket, if you will. I understand that you may have a webinar and a PDF that we can offer to anybody who's watching or listening to this episode.
Yeah. So there is a PDF. It's called Brand Strength Assessment. You can find it on my website, which is fearlessbranding.com. And I do have a webinar. It's still in process, but I have a current version of it that's in continual improvement. And if anybody wants to watch it, send me a note, robert@fearlessbranding.com, and I can share it with them.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert. Any last thoughts? A last quote? And you gave us some great stuff earlier with Steve Jobs and that construct.
Yeah, I mean, I think not necessarily different, just reinforcement. I mean, the most important question. So I guess it's a belief. What I really believe is that if you work in the kind of businesses that, that I work with, your clients hire you as much for who you are as what you do. And your ability with intention to define it and express it in a way that really resonates with your people, that is transformative.
I love that. That's a great ending statement and good food for thought for everybody who's listening to take away. So, Robert, thank you so much for being on Your Brand Amplified. I will have your website and information in the show notes for everybody. I've just really appreciated this conversation today.
Thanks, Annika.
Yeah,
It was a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. And thank you to everybody who's watching or listening to this episode. I'll be back again with another amazing guest to share their story, their journey, and some tips and tricks for you on yours. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbandamplified.com.